Going back around and what is going on in Alaska. Operation Polar Dagger. No need to fight it, they got it right up at you. A huge network failure, or at least that's what they're calling it, hits UK air traffic control. It says nationwide system failure causes chaos for travelers, delaying hundreds of flights in and out of the country for at least 12 hours. And we're supposed to believe that this was, again, a network failure. If this isn't called a hack, then I'm going to call BS on it, because this has now happened to the US and now it's happening to the UK. And they're essentially saying that it was a network error, right? Well, it said huge network failure hits UK air traffic control. Nationwide system failure causes chaos for travelers, delaying hundreds of flights. Hundreds of thousands of passengers face absolute chaos today after Britain's air traffic control system broke down on one of the busiest days of the year. The failure of NATS, which is based in Hampshire, it says we'll see scores of UK flights delayed and canceled, with contagion set to spread around Europe. It said that travel expert Simon Calder said that the fallout from the system failure would be miserable, with flights currently delayed for around 3 hours. TV presenter Gabby Logan is among those affected by shutdown, which has left her stranded on the runway at Budapest Airport. She wrote that after almost 3 weeks away from home, I am hours from hugging my family, and I just have been told that UK airspace is shut. It says we could be here for 12 hours, so we sit on the plane and wait. Now, one thing to think about is, and I'm hoping that nothing happens from this, and we are following, and I'm following all of the folks that I know in Europe that are close to covering this and seeing if they're saying anything. But something like this could also precede a major event. If this was just the beginning of something far, far worse, that would be very, very alarming. Now, this is a major system going down, and if they're going to say it happened on accident or whatever else, like I said, I'm calling BS. These are major systems that can be shut down by hacking, and they can affect a lot of things. This isn't as bad as our the power grid in the UK, or something even worse. Something that is critical to infrastructure running all over the place. So, again, we'll talk about this and much more on tonight's episode of Marfoogle TV. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, a.k.a. Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. Today, we got a ton to go over in a short amount of time, so remember, you can always go over to marfooglenews.com, again, and find all of the articles. In fact, if you go there and look for today's thumbnail, you will find every single article, tweet, video, picture, document that we have here today. Just click on what's going on in Alaska. Operation Polar Dagger was air traffic control hacked, and you will see that we have a full source bibliography there at your fingertips. It is also archived, and you can search it in the upper right-hand corner. That way you can find previous stories. If you follow the news closely like we do, you can actually connect the dots on previous stories compared to current stories. All right, let's bring in my coach/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So this is they have covered up multiple events with the airlines, and some folks don't realize how serious this really can get. The airlines going down for 3 hours or 6 hours or 12 hours or even weeks. That would be a really, really horrible event, especially if it was on a massive scale. But this is far, far, pale in urgency compared to, say, if a grid was hacked, or if water supplies were hacked, and harmless chemicals that are put in it, at least that's what they call it, turned up to max like they have been before. Something like that would take out an entire town that drinks their water. Something like that, that can happen. And there's signs like this that show us that people need to be prepared for anything. Dex, this is pretty alarming. Everybody nationwide got stuck, and they're calling it a network failure.
Yeah, and let's keep it in perspective. One of the biggest threats to UK right now, especially with everything they've done in UKR, is Russia. They have one of the largest hacking groups. It is very likely that this could be a hacked event. They haven't actually said that, although a lot of people are speculating it when this type of an outage happens, especially at this scale. It's also certainly one of the 16 things, even though we're talking about a different country, that our current president probably told Putin when he spoke to him and said, "You can't cyber hack these 16 key infrastructure things in our country because that would be off limits." Basically, giving him a targeted list of things to go after, in my opinion. I'm certain that air traffic control is one of those things. It's not just people traveling on vacation and hotty toddy flying off to some destination. The whole world revolves around air travel as it relates to business, as it relates to commerce, as it relates to even shipping goods and services. A lot of things would break down if air traffic just completely came to a halt, as we've seen before many, many years ago.
Well, he later clarified after, because we all laughed when he said, "Hey, Putin, if you're going to attack us, don't attack these 16 things." It was super, just like everybody was rolling their eyes, like, really? Yeah, how about just not attacking anything, right? But they said, if you attack these 16 things, then we're going to get pissed and do something. Mind you, there's at least five of those things that have already been attacked, but they won't say it. And I bet you it's because he said that out loud, right? Like the pipelines, the infrastructure, the different grids, the smaller grids. All of these events that have happened, at least a few of them were probably from some sort of retaliation, but they're never going to tell us that because most of the stuff doesn't even get reported in the first place. Over 700 events in a matter of a few years happened to our grid, and only two out of 700, and it was like the second time that was reported to the public, was more recently. Two out of the 700 times, those went to the Department of Energy and essentially stayed there until the NERC report. So it's like they don't tell us. They will literally put it under the rug, and they will not tell the public. They'll say, "Oh, it was just somebody pressed the wrong button," like they did in Hawaii, right? It's BS. And I'm speaking of the false missile alert, not the fires, by the way. But we have seen so many of these events, and if you're like me and I follow the news every single day, it's like, whoa, this is repeating itself. I think that they hope that most people aren't going to see the news every day, and they're going to forget about the last 10 times that this happened, and then think that, oh yeah, that could happen. But when it starts happening on a regular basis, that's when you're like, okay, come on. And nationwide. All right, sure. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Again, let us know if you think it was either a hack or if it was just some sort of accident that knocked out all of the air traffic in their whole country. Okay, and then Dottie, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. And thank you everybody that has already popped in over on DLive. Thank you. We have Yobi, Kimbria, Karen from Columbus, Warrior Now, Skyhouse, and of course Chance. Thank you for modding over there. And then thank you for the super thanks, James Sparks 8033 on the last show. And then, of course, thank you on that last show, Bad Apple Media, Be Real Beast, Sharon Davis, Bible Talk, Kenny Cams, and Paul Chidium. Thank you guys for supporting Independent. All right. And then we have Storm Adalia. Dex, do you want to talk about Storm Adalia?
Certainly. So Idalia is the next or the current tropical storm that is heading up through the Gulf, which is extremely warm. and it's expected to potentially, well, not potentially, it's going to make landfall at some point. They're just trying to determine where. But unfortunately, it's looking like it might go right into that same Tampa area that got hit with that major storm last year. So if this happens, it's not going to look good. Matter of fact, DeSantis has already told 1.5 million people to get out now, as they're saying here. I think there's probably a lot more updates to the tracking of this. For right now, most of the models sort of show it making that right hook across the northern part of Florida, which is near Tampa, near that armpit of Florida, if you want to call it, up in that corner. So we, expect that to go that direction. Of course, these things can always change at any time, but if this grows to be a Cat 4 or larger, that's going to be huge, and it's going to have a major impact like we've seen other Cat 4s. So for those who are Fugle fam that live in Florida, any part of it, or even other areas that might be affected along the coast in Georgia and South Carolina, be prepared.
Yeah, and as far as many of our audience are already prepared, but if you're new here, we just encourage everybody to have some sort of basic plan, whether it be a local disaster or a hurricane, a tornado, an earthquake, or something worse. Um, most people here are prepared. And then we have, of course, Israel to have partial laser defenses by next year. We've actually covered that they were talking about this. Now they're kind of confirming that they will have at least partial laser defenses by this time next year. Rafael Advanced Defense Systems Chairman Yuval Stenitz told Army Radio on Sunday. Says 1 year from now, Israel will be the first country to have partial laser protection. In 2 years, there may be complete protection against missiles, shells, rockets, or anything else. This will protect us both in the south and in the north, said Steinitz. It says, again, it says he talked about multiple successful tests destroying rockets, quote, with a very sophisticated laser weapons system. We have done the same for mortars, rockets, and UAVs. So this is quite insane that this has basically advanced so quickly to the point where they are talking about within 2 years, they're going to have a full-on defense system with lasers. Lasers weren't even a thing 10 years ago, or they were. Of course, they've been around for a very long time. But as far as now they're equipped on actual Navy ships, now they're being used to knock out UAVs, and now they're saying that they'll be able to knock, rockets and mortars out of the sky with them. This is kind of nuts. We're living in kind of a Star Wars era where you're going to see lasers defending the city instead of these displays you see above Israel of the Iron Dome. Now you're going to see laser beams all over the place, knocking things out of the sky and explosions from them knocking them out. Lasers are probably going to change everything. I mean, think about this. This is like in every sci-fi film that we've ever seen is laser defense systems, and now it's actually happening. It's quite wild to think about. But I also think about how the enemies probably think, well, if they are making a system that will be impenetrable in a certain amount of years, then they would probably want to attack it before they have these systems up. Lasers, I would think, if they could perfect this and get the technology right, you wouldn't be able to launch a single rocket towards them if they actually had the system perfected. So pretty crazy stuff. And then Japan asked China to urge citizens to halt harassment after start of Fukushima wastewater release. So Dex, we actually talked about this the other day, that they were telling Japanese citizens to talk quietly in China because they were worried that Chinese citizens were going to attack Japanese citizens because everybody was so pissed about the leak or the purposeful emptying of the wastewater into the ocean. Now, others have said that this water has basically that the half-life is already done, that the water is harmless, whatever else. But there's a lot of people that don't care about that. The Japanese citizens have actually gone out and stocked up a year's worth of seaweed and salt and anything from the sea because they're paranoid about it. And they're saying that China is so pissed off about it, they warned that Japanese citizens should be quiet because they're worried that Chinese citizens are going to harass them. Well, now they're saying there is actual harassment going on. We thought, man, it's kind of weird that Japan is telling their citizens to quietly talk like something else is going on here. Like there's something that they're not telling the public. Dex, do you want to give your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with what you just said. You basically explained it. What's happening? It's what we talked about. They are fearful of this, and now the prime minister is literally calling on the he summoned China's ambassador and asked him if they would please, encourage their citizens not to partake in this type of activity. And specifically, they were saying that crank phone calls, which is probably harmless, but stone throwing at diplomatic facilities and Japanese schools. Those are the types of activities that they're seeing right now, which can escalate quickly. And obviously, sentiment like that that builds up in the public against another group uh, will quickly escalate from something like prank calls and stone throwing to greater levels of threats and potential violence. So I think it's clear that they're asking for that to stop. I don't know that that will make a difference, but it certainly sheds light on the fact that this is an actual issue, not just, oh, by the way, talk softly and hope that nobody hears you because we're not sure what's going to happen, to now it is happening.
Something about this has just been weird since day one. This whole thing to me is just odd. Like, why would Chinese citizens, unless they were told, tons of propaganda by their country that it's not that person who's living in China. How is it their fault that their country's government emptied wastewater? I don't know. Something doesn't sit right with this. But again, if you are in China and you are a Japanese citizen and this has happened to you, or if this is even a thing, let me know. Otherwise, I wonder if this is, something else is going on. Before we move on, I do want to remind you guys the UPS unit, they have actually held 30 units. I believe that there are 30 units just for the Fugel fam before they start selling to the regular public. They literally did this because so many Fugel fam wanted the UPS unit, and they didn't have any when they were waiting for batches. So if you do want to get it, again, special kind of thing that they're doing for the Fugel family because so many folks missed out on the last time they had a batch of them. The UPS unit turns this Energy Flex 1500 into an uninterrupted power supply. So for a limited time, they're holding those for Fugel fam. So make sure to use the code. And again, make sure if you can't get it through this website, make sure to call them. Go to marfuglenews.com/energy and tell them you're from the Fugel family. This is a solar generator, so it can get power from the sun. It's unlimited, and you don't have to store gas. In an SHTF situation, it's going to be incredibly hard to locate fuel. If it really goes down like many people think it is, I'm sure that gas stations aren't going to be a fun place to be. Whereas your home or your bug out spot with your nice solar generator that can get power from the sun is going to be pretty awesome. Not to mention, if it's not a major disaster, SHTF, if your power goes out for any reason, whether it be a storm or something else, having backup power on demand that is stored and ready to go when the power goes out just to switch over is absolutely amazing. These are silent, and even when they are at full capacity and their fan is going, you couldn't hear it from 3 feet away, let alone 3 blocks away like a gas-powered generator. So make sure to go check it out. When you do support any of our affiliates like Energy, not only are you getting a Army strong generator with the Flex 1500 or the Flex Tactical, but you are also supporting our independent channel. You're getting a discount while doing it, and you are protecting yourself in the future. This is something that to be able to replace your power and to have power when nobody else does is a huge, huge, huge thing. You can be completely off grid. You can bring it anywhere. You can bring it out to the middle of the woods. You don't need anything. You just need the panel and the main unit and a battery. Boom, you're good. marfuglenews.com/energy. And remember, you can expand it up to 96 batteries, and you can mod it with different mods like the UPS mod. And of course, the supercharger, which allows you to plug in 12 panels instead of 4. So again, it can be modded over time, and as they invent new things you can mod it with, that you can just add that in like a Lego brick. All right, and then China's aggressive behavior in the South China Sea must be challenged, U.S. Navy official says. A Chinese naval Z-9 helicopter prepares to land aboard the People's Liberation Army, blah, blah, blah. It's the typical description. China's, quote, aggressive behaviors in the South China Sea, including the use of a water cannon by its Coast Guard against a Philippine vessel, must be challenged and checked, the commander of the U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet said on Sunday. Vice Admiral Carl Thomas assured the Philippines that the U.S. backing in the face of shared challenges in the region, saying, my forces are out here for a reason. The largest of the U.S. Navy's forward deployed fleets, the 7th Fleet, headquartered in Japan, operates as many as 70 ships and has around 150 aircraft and more than 27,000 sailors. It operates over an area of 124 million square kilometers, or 48 million square miles, from the bases of Japan, South Korea, and Singapore. It says, quote, you have to challenge people, I would say, operating in a gray zone. When they're taking a little bit more and pushing you, you've got to push back. You have to sail and operate. It says there's really no better example of aggressive behavior than the activity on the August 5th of the shoal. So they have continued to talk about this interaction with the spray hoses. And these hoses, by the way, I think could kill you if sprayed at a regular person straight on. I mean, it can blast you. I don't know if it would kill you directly, but it could knock you back into a wall and literally take you out. But this incident has been used in so many different arguments of this, and I'm sure it's happened more than a few times. And probably half of, the one big one that they covered, they've used as this kind of this push towards pushing back. I don't know what's actually happening there. There's been a lot of conflicting details about the Philippines. They have, put out tons of weird stories about how China is, being friendly with them, and then they're not being friendly with them. One thing that I do know, though, is that it seems like they're setting up for the U.S. Navy to push harder and closer to Taiwan and closer to China, and it looks like they're setting up for something. Dex, as far as the this incident that they keep using, it's like I'm just surprised they're using it now August 5th. It's almost a month later.
Well, it's also the same place that they just had the incidents where the Philippines Coast Guard charged through the Chinese Coast Guard that had blockaded them off, and only a couple ships were able to charge through the barricade so they could get to that same location to resupply food and stuff. So this is an ongoing issue. At that, this is the sunken ship, the old World War II relic ship that they've turned into like a sort of a base or an outpost, really, is what it is. But at the end of the day, it's they're claiming it. Philippines is claiming that territory. It's disputed waters, disputed territories between both them and China. So it continues to be one of those contested areas. And of course, makes perfect sense that the U.S. is aligning with our ally, the Philippines, over this dispute, as well as we align with others. I know even our current president's going to be headed, and we'll probably talk about this in the coming days, will be heading to Vietnam, and they have their own disputes with China over areas and territories. So this will continue to be an issue. This one just so happens to be so hotly contested because of the actions that keep happening at the location.
Yeah, and they keep having these kind of tit for tat, pushbacks. But one thing that I think that there's a lot of people that just don't care about what's going on with China and their neighbors, but it's going to be important into the big picture. If you are somebody who believes that China is going for world domination right now, then you should pay attention to what they're doing with their neighbors. And because if the U.S., strategically, if the good U.S. government, the whatever left of the good, if they do not control it, all of the neighbors, then they won't be able to control China. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I have, of course, looked at a lot of information that shows that if we don't control their neighbors and have good ties with their neighbors, and China ends up, pushing back and owning more of them, then China will gain a whole lot of power. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. And again, when I say good America, I'm kind of fried today because we had kind of a house disaster, kind of a, I guess, sort of the opposite of a flood, but it was all night trying to fix up things in my house. But um, and it was hot today. What I mean by good, and I'll try to say this right because I'm not saying it right. There there is a lot of powers right now, and I think that there are people that are outside the US government that are controlling and pulling on puppet strings right now. And of course, a lot of people believe that, our prez and China are working together. They very well may be, but there is still good people. There are still good people in our government that are trying to fight back on this. And it depends on what you believe, if China is actually trying to go for world domination, or if you think that they're going for this huge order of things where everybody's on the same page. I think they are going for this new order of things, but I think that they are going to place China at the top of the table or at the end of the table as the new leader. This sounds really crazy to think about, and it's like a dystopian world that nobody wants to admit that could happen because they think, oh, the U.S. Or if you look at it from the other direction, the U.S., if anybody threatens whatever the hegemony that we have is, then the U.S. and the powers that be are going to start a war anyways to change things around. Dex, I wish I could describe it the way that it's not coming out right, but essentially, we need to have control. And it's not a good thing to have the U.S. in all of this, but I would rather have the U.S. at the top of the world than to have China at the top of the world. And there might be some sacrifices there to keep that. Everywhere, all of the countries of the world and all of the governments of the world are moving towards like a dystopian nightmare. So it's kind of like, which dystopian nightmare do you want? All right. And then the BRICS summit. Dex, do you want to go over what happened with BRICS?
So quite interesting. So the summit's over, obviously, that was last week, but the coming out of it, everybody was all, worried about whether or not this de-dollarization and a new currency would come. Now, honestly, it's a little early for that, in my opinion. And that's exactly what happened. It didn't come out of that meeting. And in fact, what's interesting is that the positioning taken by a lot of the leaders was actually unique and different. In other words, they weren't all in alignment. One of the things that did happen, as we called earlier, was that Saudi Arabia and UAE, United Arab Emirates, joined, but so did Iran, Ethiopia, Egypt, and Argentina. So they added 5 more countries. That's the first expansion in 13 years. So big, big. That is the big thing that came out of the meeting. But just to give you some quick highlights on this whole notion about the currency, it is still a big threat. It potentially will happen, especially as they grow and get larger. But the positions like Brazil, they were pushing for it. They wanted to see it happen. Putin, on the other hand, was more talking about using local currency. And that's probably because his ruble is in the tanker, so to speak. And he wants, people to be doing transactions in each of their local currencies as opposed to one new currency because he wants to get his ruble back up. Of course, India, who is tightly entrenched with the US, just like they are with our adversaries, especially since they're in BRICS, said, hey, it's kind of difficult to overturn these long-standing payment arrangements we had. And then, of course, Xi came in and promoted reforming the entire world's financial system. Didn't talk much about whether BRICS should be doing it. It was more focused on the world system, which I think a lot of people think about when you think about the great and the word that goes with that. That's the reset. And people think that he's somewhat connected to how that may play out. And then lastly, South Africa came in and said, yeah, no one tabled this discussion of a currency. It's not even been in an informal meetings. It's not a discussion right now, which was also interesting to hear coming from them. And they also said that setting up a common currency presupposes setting up a central bank, and it presupposes losing independence on monetary policies. And I don't think any country is ready for that, quote unquote. That's what South Africa had to say. So when you put all that together, those are the main leaders that started this. They all are sort of coming at it from different angles. So I do think there's a lot to be said about the potential of de-dollarization from BRICS. We did see a significant amount of oil. One of the largest transactions in oil was, I don't remember which currency it was traded in. It was in India, but it was traded for a local currency that was not US dollars. It was like million barrels or something. It was one of the first ones that went through that wasn't
In
with
rupees?
the yeah, it may have been. No, it wasn't in, I don't think it was theirs. It was in other countries. But the point was it was one of the first times that that had happened in a significant amount. So we've seen that type of pressure against the petrodollar, as some people like to call it. And I think we'll continue to see that from BRICS, but I don't know that it's going to be like next week they're rolling out a brand new currency, especially given these different positions from the leadership.
It is and was the petrodollar. That's the thing. They said the first time. So if this keeps going, this is not good. This is not good for our peace. This isn't good for world peace. Stephen McMahon said the the U.S. has never run the world, and there's basically puppeteering going on. Yes, you're right. But to the public, and the story is that they tell us is that the U.S. is number one. Those same groups that run the planet as of now, which sounds kooky. If there's so many people that would go, oh, one of those people that think there's people running it above the countries. That should be a fact by now. I'm sorry, but if you look at any leader and go, okay, so who is the leader? Is it the Prez? No, because the Prez has advisors and people above him, and there's people above them, and there's companies now that have more power than any leader in the world. But say that the story is the U.S. is the number one country, right? We've always had this thing of like numbers. Who's the most powerful? Well, the U.S. is the most powerful. What I'm saying, what would change is the story. The story that the world would be told is that China is number one. There's so many people that just pushes the wrong way. They're like, no, China will never be number one. I sure as heck hope not. And I have faith that everything will work out good. But again, down the road, it might not be great if U.S. is still number one, because the U.S., if it gets infiltrated by these bad people and by more bad people and even worse people, you never know when the next Adolf is born. You're talking about everything changes for the worse anyways. But I would rather not have Xi as the number one country. And that's what he's trying to do. Even if you don't think that he's ever going to rule the planet, you can definitely see him trying. And I don't think that anybody denies that he wants to dominate the world. He's said it. I mean, he said it as plain as day. He says, as part of his heavenly mandate, that there is no other way that we should have it besides China being number one. In the heavenly mandate, it says that China should be and shall be number one at some point. It's their religion. They need to be number one. They want to be number one. And if you see all the power moves that they're making with the Belt and Road Initiative, if you see what they're doing with these loans and with the infiltration that they're doing on all the countries and their military buildup enough is enough to show you that they are trying to become the most powerful nation in the world. What they're doing geopolitically and financially, there's no way you could say that they're not trying. And I sure hope that if your view is like, oh, we have faith in the U.S., what parts? Because look at what is going on right now. Our former president got arrested, and they're trying to put us all this stuff on our former president. Like, our system is broken. Something is severely wrong, and there are some pretty evil people doing things right now. So whatever you believe, we're about to head into some very dark, shadowy times. Go ahead, Dex.
Yeah, I was just going to clarify that report on the transaction for the oil. It was 1 million barrels, and you're right, it was rupees, but it was from the UAE. That was the country that they sold to India 1 million barrels of oil and did it for rupees instead of USD. And it also, at the same time, or just before that, a UAE gold exporter had sold about basically 1.54 million in US dollars, but 128.4 million rupees of gold to India from UAE, and did that transaction also in rupees, which was also a monumental type of transaction.
Now, his name is not coming up to the guy on screen on the very right. This picture of the BRIC Summit. Who is that? And it's at the tip of my tongue. It probably says no. It doesn't. Who is that? The white gentleman.
That'd be Brazil, isn't it?
Is that Brazil? Gosh, he looks so much like somebody who used to be in office in the U.S. like 15, 20 years ago. Who is that? Is that the Brazilian leader? Look at that though. Look at these guys, and they're bringing on Saudi Arabia. I mean, we're talking about the big oil powers are now going to be hopping in bed with China, and they're already in bed, and they're hopping into BRICS. Like, this isn't good for anybody, and it's definitely not good if we're not trying to have a World War III. Because if you believe that we're going to stop it, how do you think we're going to stop it? Dex, go ahead.
If the gentleman to the right of Modi being the prime minister of India, is Russia. It's Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov. The
Oh,
other
that's
end
right.
was who I was looking at, and that's the Brazilian president.
Okay. All right. So that's why I recognize him. All right. And then we have China's $10 trillion hidden debt mountain could be the ticking time bomb that JB warned of. It says for some time now, markets have been buffeted almost on a daily basis by gloomy economic news filtering out of China, which, by the way, our media has really been pumping that China is failing. Now, they say there's all sorts of evidence that says they are, and they probably are. But one thing I do think is weird is just the last month. It has been pushed so hard. They want everybody to know that China is doing not well. It says the world's second largest economy is grappling with a raft of economic troubles, ranging from deflation to record youth unemployment and a deepening property crisis, as much of its anticipated post-pandemic rebound has failed to materialize. Now, I would think that there would be a property crisis, especially with, things like ghost cities, literal cities that are empty, that are just literal husks of buildings, skyscrapers, entire cities that nobody lives in. Yeah, you would think they would. But they did that stuff on purpose for some reason. And it's not slowing them down making their militaries or spending the money. I wonder who would be the brokest and who would collapse. I would think it would be the lower class, and of course the people will go poor. But I wonder if China will care. And it says now a lesser known but less ominous economic threat is rearing its head: China's colossal hidden debt problem. This mainly refers to a mountain of liabilities accumulated by the country's local governments, mostly to fund regional infrastructure projects such as building roads and bridges. An analysis by the Chinese media outlet Caxin Global estimated the outstanding obligations of the so-called local government financing vehicles, or LGFVs, at close to a staggering $10 trillion. So let me point out something. Where is this coming from? A Chinese media outlet. Now, they never put out anything that's not, approved. That's what gets me about this is, Dex, have you noticed that 4 or 5 of the big stories that we've covered lately are coming from Chinese media outlets? Now, if Xi didn't want them to say something like this or hide something, he has the power to do so. In fact, most media in China they're not stupid enough to go against the CCP and say that they're failing. They hide things like the unemployment, all of these things on purpose to hide any failures that they have. Or they pass it up to the next, block. Everybody says, oh, it's the guy above me fault, right? Have you noticed that, Dex? All of the stories saying that they're failing are coming out of China.
Well, yeah, of course. And that's the only way they can come out, because nobody has any information other than what's being reported. So it certainly could be. Yeah, it certainly could be. Let's make ourselves look weak when we really aren't. And maybe that's the game that's being played here. But I mean, just what they're reporting here, $10 trillion of internal debt is staggering. It's like it's finally reaching over 50% of their GDP. So what that means is all of the sub nations, or the sub provinces, whatever you want to refer to them as, these local governments have borrowed significantly amounts of money from the main government, from the CCP, and they've done it to the rate of $10 trillion. So they basically just wrote these checks off, and this is off the books, so to speak. These LGFVs are not on the books. They're hidden debt. But these local governments have to pay that note, and that's how the main government stays afloat. They keep getting that monthly note coming in. Well, if the local governments are getting to the point where they're starting to get strapped and won't be able to make the debt payments, then that creates a huge problem. But like you said, this could be just a whole bunch of Ganda being pumped out so that we all think they're just falling apart at the seams.
And if anybody ever worries about China, what I've noticed is people clap back. If anytime I say, hey, we need to watch out for China, don't underestimate your enemy. That's in Sun Tzu as well, something that Xi studied very, very closely. He's actually wrote pieces for his local articles like 15 years ago about how the importance of the art of war. And every time I say something about China possibly becoming number one, people go, oh no, they're collapsing. Their whole economy is going down. A lot of the information is coming from Chinese media outlets. How are they allowed to do this? We know that China has a really tight grip. They'll take somebody's news license away if they say the wrong thing about the CCP. So do they want us to know that they're failing? Or do they not want the general people, the general civilians in all these countries that would be worried about it? Do they like that they think that they're weak and that they make crappy products and they're not able to make anything and it will just fall apart in 5 minutes? The element of surprise is a very powerful one. I don't know. I don't underestimate them. I feel in my gut that China is going to be a huge part of this move forward in this restructuring. Look at their ties with the agency that controlled the whole world in 2019. The 3-letter agency starts with a W and ends with an O. That agency was directly holding hands with China. They went in and essentially people would get punished just for saying like, hey, can we get a third party to go in there and check it out? Not somebody from the W and the H and the O. That to me says that they may be in somebody's pocket. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. And then Poland, Baltic states warned that they could seal borders with Belarus if military migrants tensions grow. So this is big news. Before we move on, though, I do want to thank you, Chanel Beveliqua. Thank you for the massive support. Thank you for the super chat. Says Foogle fam, I missed a few days last week. Are you guys watching the YouTube channel Hawaii Real Estate? I may be behind, but pretty eye-opening. I have actually seen his videos, and I think a caller actually brought up one of their videos. I wonder, is that where you found it from one of our callers last week? And then they are the ones who kind of put out some pretty big stuff about that. Oh, it's the channel, and the gentleman did interviews of the people there, of the citizens there that were basically like, they're screwing us. They're giving us $700, but my whole place got burnt down. I have seen that channel, so I will have to check it out again. And then High Tech Computers, thanks for the info, gents. Love you, Fooglers. Catherine Wilson, thank you for the super sticker. Thank you guys for, again, supporting independent. And then Zen1AZ, thank you for stopping by and saying hi. Dottie and Be Real Beast, thank you, and thank you. Gary Stoven says, finally caught alive. Thanks for covering UK flights. Yeah, I don't know how we could not. That's obviously something is up there. And then Poland, NATO members, Poland and the Baltic states will seal off their borders with Russia's ally, Belarus, in the event of any military incidents or a massive migrant push by Minsk, the interior ministers warned Monday. Well, why do you think that they would do that? Are they afraid of sleeper cells? Are they afraid of people coming in and causing problems? This is actually a huge move. It says the ministers said that they were seeing growing tensions on NATO's and European Union's borders with Belarus, which has taken in thousands of Russian military mercenaries and is pushing Middle East and African migrants into Europe, despite various forms of barriers that have been being put up. It says they warned of swift and concerted response in the case of a military incident and or large migrant push. It says the ministers of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia addressed the media following their talks in Warsaw In a joint statement, they demanded that the government, Belarus, President Alexander Lukashenko, immediately remove from its territory the Wagner Group mercenaries. So they're literally saying that they need to get rid of the Wagner Group mercenaries. But again, I thought since Wagner is gone, or what's his face, that it's not a big deal anymore, right? It says they also demanded the removal of migrants from border areas and their return to their home countries. Only if you could just do that by a snap of a finger. Interior Minister Mariusz Kamiński of Poland said that they have a critical incident involving the military of an influx of migrants to Poland and the Baltic states from Belarus would be met with an immediate response and the shutting of all border crossings to travelers and to goods. So they're setting it up. They're putting the T on the T-ball on the T, and they're about to smack something in there. This is totally a possible setup for a Fantastic Freddy. They're essentially saying any kind of critical incident involving military or an influx of people coming across, which they could totally be in Belarus hiring people and say, hey, run across real quick. And then they can shut the borders and or escalate things. Dex, did you think of that? Like they could have agents over there from NATO saying, hey, everybody cross now. Because, we've never seen that anywhere else in the U.S.
Controlling influx of that has been an issue, and it becomes even more so during conflict time. So it's definitely a way to get people across undercover, so to speak. And it is certainly anything going on with the border right now between Poland and Belarus, and even the countries bordering there, like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. All of those, they're all rife right now to see anything pop off at any moment, just given the state of the tension between Russia and NATO, and by proxy, Belarus and NATO.
Truthful says, I just wanted to know the melting point of Slate. Rip Curl Readiness, much love, dear. Hey, Rip Curl, it's been so nice to see you. Rip Curl's been here like almost every show, and I really appreciate you, Rip. Thank your mods in general by going over to marfooglenews.com/friends. I normally do a shout out to this in the very beginning of the show, but I think I forgot. Make sure to go over and check out all your mods. They have great channels. They have great of course, books on Amazon, if you're talking about Chance Paladin. They have great videos, like Trinity just put out some awesome videos. And, of course, everybody was praying for Trinity. Trinity had a really rough year. And then, of course, Ilea has some really funny stuff. She is getting better and better at just everything, editing, everything. So make sure to go support all of them. And then Wages World has been, of course, covering all of the solar events. There's been some really wild ones. So make sure to go check out all of our wonderful mods and help them get on their own feet so they can obviously get off onto their own journey. All right. And then before we move on real quick, make sure to go check out marfooglenews.com/EMP. You can actually get yourself a device that can protect you against all forms of EMP. Of course, it can actually protect you against all phases, E1, E2, and E3. And it can protect your cars, your trucks, your motorcycles, your boats, your RVs, your ham radios, your generators, even your home against all sorts of EMP strikes and from solar events. So if you do have a huge solar event or a Carrington level event happen, which it will at some point, then your car will still run. Your motorcycle will still run. Your boat will still run. Your ham radio will still work. Your devices in your house that are plugged in within 250 linear feet from your EMP shield will work. This is a super easy device to put in your cars and trucks, if that is mainly the most popular one. All you have to do is wire the green to the ground part of your frame, red to red on your battery, and then black to black on your battery, and you're good. Then you are protected. This is the same company that's outfitted agencies DHS, DOD, and now the DEMSO team helping protect the Texas grid. So make sure to go over. I believe that this will save lives in the event of either an EMP or a CME, which are now the most talked about disasters that are sort of this looming threat over our heads. But it's definitely something that you can protect yourself against. That's marfugglenews.com/EMP. Make sure to use the code MARF. All right, thank you guys. And let's see here. Dex, do you want to talk about I'm an ex-KGB sleeper agent?
Yes, and it's 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit is when slate melts into molten, almost lava-like state. Okay, so this is an interesting statement coming out from a former, claiming to be a former KGB sleeper agent, and he warned of what he's calling the most powerful weapon in Putin's arsenal, and it could cause chaos for the West. Well, that is specifically what he's talking about is Ganda and misinformation. And now, on one hand, this could be Ganda in and of itself is one way to look at it. But at the same time, I think we also know very well, just from the playbook of the KGB, which Putin was part of back when it existed, and how they did use and to this day, I think they continue to still use misinformation as a very strong tenet of what they try to do. Whether it's just look at the whole coup attempt that happened in their country. None of us know if it was real or fake, and everybody's got a different view on it. I mean, and you still can't tell what happened, and we don't even know if Prigozhin is alive or perished because of the way they control and manage narratives, not only in their own media, but they also have a really good way of doing it outside as part of their espionage slash clandestine activities they do in other countries. So I know we're probably sort of tired of hearing about it, because in our own environment here in the US, it was used, or at least it was used as an excuse to point fingers at why all these things happened in 2016, 2017, 2018. It was, Russia had the finger pointed at them left and right for a whole bunch of things that ended up not even being, or at least it's now being reported that wasn't what they did. So we can sort of roll our eyes at it, but we shouldn't, because they actually are really, really good at it. And that's what this person is trying to sort of warn and bring back to light, that, hey, pay attention to what Russia does with its Ganda, because a lot of times when they say something, they don't, it's really something different, and you don't understand it, because they are using that as a means of weaponization.
And there's by the way, there's things that have happened throughout history, like when Genghis Khan would take over a place. And this is something that I think that Xi is actually doing. I think that Xi looks up to Genghis Khan. There's a lot of debates whether he would or he wouldn't. But if you look at Xi's history with his father and how his father was treated by Mao Zedong, or Zhao Meidong, whatever the gentleman before, that Zhao Meidong was against any kind of worshiping of Genghis Khan. And he removed a bunch of statues and removed things. And he actually treated Xi's dad like crap. So there might be some childhood stuff there of why he didn't, he did the opposite of what Mao Zedong was like. But if you look at throughout history, Russia and China have a lot of these similar properties of how they took over places. But Genghis Khan was quoted by Putin a couple years ago, and I remember covering this. Genghis Khan would send in people to essentially sow discord in all of these places, and he got absolute information on all of these different areas. Like Japan, they would know information. They thought information was the most important part. They knew that the samurais would not do anything that would break honor for them, so they would do these nasty, dirty things when they would go in and fight war with them, because they knew that the samurais couldn't do anything back, because they wouldn't do it sneakily. They wouldn't stab somebody in the back. They wouldn't burn somebody if they didn't, if it wasn't part of this thing. So they knew every place that they were taking over, because they would send in people beforehand, and they would have them study them, and they would also have them spread disinformation. Now, disinformation is a hot keyword now, because everybody talks about disinfo and fake news and all of this, and it's become an info war. Not, no quoting to Mr. AJ, but it's true. Literally, we are in a information conflict right now. And information is one of the most important things ever. And who is infiltrating the U.S. in more than one way? It would be Russia and China. And this information conflict that's going on right now is being helped by the people at the very top. They are dividing us. They're splitting us up. It looks like they are trying to break down this really strong mold. They're pouring, alcohol into it to break down the molecules and to make it easier to basically take over. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. But when you think about these sleeper agents and things, I also think about what we've been talking about with the J and the 6 stuff. It's like there were people hidden in the crowd trying to get people pumped up and hyped up. Think about what other countries are doing to us as well. Think about what Russia could do with sleeper cells. Think about what the U.S. does with sleeper cells. Heck, we go in and take leaders out. Heck, Haiti had the guy taken out in his castle or whatever, or in his abode. Dex, that was Haiti, right? The Haiti leader, they had 20 guys come in and they ended up tying it back to some guy in Florida.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, imagine what they're doing to us. Imagine how many events that we'll never know, or at least not in our generation, maybe 60 years from now, it'll be declassified, that are caused by these agents. I mean, this is every 007 and, spy movie, Born Supremacy thing. That stuff happens in real life, and we see the results of it. All of this geopolitical mess and different countries having these revolutions and all these things, these are all 3-letter agencies doing it. Just depends on which one. So that's what scares me about the future is I believe that China and Russia already have a huge, huge force here in the United States and in Europe. And they could start some real bad stuff. Especially after the SolarWinds hack and how they accessed all of the information, including they most likely now know the 9 transformers that they need to knock down our entire grid. And then Night Stalker helicopters trained to defend strategic Alaskan island. So here is absolute confirmation. So when I said this about 3 weeks ago, and I said a month and 5 weeks ago too, I said that the Foogle fam military member, high-ranking member, said there is something really big going on in Alaska, and they're having this drill now. But we said before this it was ever even being talked about that they're moving massive gear. We even had a Foogle family member that ended up cutting. They weren't able to get on, but they said that they were deploying to Alaska. So over this last 5-week period, there's been something going massively on in Alaska. Alaska is a super important part in defense of the U.S., but something is definitely bigger than just Polar Dagger. Now we have absolute confirmation that they have been moving things there, and now they're telling us it's because of Polar Dagger. It says Special Operations Command North released pictures today of personnel from the 160th Special Operation Aviation Regiment, or SOAR, as well as the last 2 MH-60M Black Hawk helicopters training on Shemya earlier this month as part of an exercise nicknamed Polar Dagger. SOC North oversees all U.S. Special Operations activities in and around the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Polar Dagger offered Special Operations Forces, including the 160th SOAR, an opportunity to demonstrate operational reach and the ability of U.S. forces to defend critical infrastructure, enhance all-domain awareness, and strengthen our understanding of activity in the Arctic. A caption accompanying one of the pictures explained, it said that beyond that, Polar Dagger is a demonstration of rapidly deployable Special Operations Forces capabilities in the Arctic and subarctic regions. The pictures show that the U.S. Air Force C-17A Globemaster III cargo aircraft brought members of the 160th SOAR, as well as other material, as Shems Erickson Air Station for Polar Dagger. This facility was previously known as Shemya Air Force Base. So these special forces, they could bring a Globemaster, drop these guys pretty much anywhere in the world, deploy, and start some if you know what I mean. So one thing, though, is the big gear is still not explained. And this is total confirmation of what the Foogle fam was saying. And the Fugel fam military, we don't just say it. If one person tells us something, that could be from this or that. And if 20 people tell us, and it's, if it could be from a YouTube thing, we wait until multiple military members tell us about something and make sure that it's not something that will screw up any kind of, loose lips sink ships thing. But one thing for sure is that it was always going to be public. They're moving tons of gear to Alaska. Why though? They say, now they come out even just a day after and they come out, oh, it's Polar Dagger. I don't believe it. Personally, I think that they are getting ready for something way, way bigger. Dex, isn't it? This doesn't explain all of the massive gear, all of the different things that have been flown there, and of course all of the crazy flights out there, and all the personnel deployment to Alaska. Why would Alaska be important if something was to go down?
Well, this particular location is the Aleutian Islands. So as you have on screen there, if you can scroll up just a little bit, everyone can see that long trail that comes off the tip of Alaska, those little islands. Well, this goes out way beyond that, what you normally see on a map. It's the very, very end. It is literally 1,000 miles away from mainland Alaska, but only 500 miles away from mainland Russia. It's right there. Now, I know Russia and Alaska are much closer up further north, but down south, this is important because this is a route to the Arctic. This is one of the routes that they're expecting that China and Russia will start using as the ice pulls back and they can create that new Arctic route that comes down across the northern section of Russia and down here past the eastern section of Russia into China. This would be that route. This is also where we have our early warning defense systems. So all of our expensive and very mission critical radar systems that are constantly monitoring for launches from both China and Russia, mostly Russia in that area, but China too. This is where they're located. And I believe there's another image on here that you can see the actual base. There's a huge runway, 10,000-foot runway on this little tiny island. This is a very important strategic location of all the places in Alaska. It's one that is very important. As you can see, we have quite a bit there. And so, as you recall, it was not but a couple weeks ago, we talked about both China and Russia teaming up together with an armada of ships running right by this location, running right by other areas in the Aleutian Islands that are part of Alaska. And they were staying in international waters, but getting close. They were so close that we really couldn't respond. All we could do was point some of our Pacific ships in their direction to sort of signal, hey, we're coming your way. But by the way, we're 22 nautical miles an hour. We're way over here in the Pacific. It's going to take us days to get there. But no, we're coming. But really nothing else we could do but launch some Poseidons and put them in the air to monitor and track them. Of course, we probably could have launched some other ships, but that type of activity is sort of a wake-up call. A lot of people said, hey, we should be investing more and putting more bases, especially an Air Force base or an airfield base where we could quickly respond from. Sorry, not Air Force, a Navy base where we could quickly respond ships from out of Alaska. So again, this whole area is becoming much more strategic because as China's getting more involved, it was very strategic with just Russia as our main adversary. But now as China's getting involved, it's becoming very strategic as those two are teaming up and obviously doing things towards us. Having the ability for a special operations group, which is what this was. How do you take a group like a spec ops group and strategically insert them quickly in a hurry into an island like this so they could defend it? In other words, adversary like China and Russia is coming in to take over or take out those installations of radars. We got to get a team in there. We don't know how they got the helicopters there. Some suggest that they put them on the airplanes and flew them. Others suggest that because those helicopters can actually be refueled in the air, but it's a long flight. That's 1,000 miles from mainland Alaska. So, but for them to be able to prove that out, that's kind of a big deal. And it's a very big test for them to run a spec ops team in to defend the island in the midst of potentially having an issue like we saw in that drill with both Russia and China teaming up with an armada.
And for China to take something like Shemya Island or one of these islands with the radar installations out, why would they do that? Well, what are these installations for? They're for monitoring launches and everything else. The thing is that this drill is very important because they would need to get them there within, an hour or 2 hours or 30 minutes or somewhere else from somewhere that's close by and get there by plane, drop them into spots. And like Dex said, the fact that they had helicopters and things, it's like, how did they even do this? Because they would need to defend this within minutes. Because if China did something like that, it would be doing it, and within minutes we would know. So then they would need to take out monitoring installations, then launch things all in rapid succession. So if you think about the worst case scenario that they're practicing for, it's terrifying. So say if China went in, took out all these installations, why would they be doing that? Well, they would be doing that so we wouldn't be able to monitor launches and all of these different things. Along these islands, Fooglefam has said that some of those are kind of our first line of defense. These radar things can basically detect when things are launched. So if they're practicing this, maybe they know something that we don't. Maybe that is part of a longer, bigger plan. If something does go down, they would take out these islands. We know, I now know that Japan, Guam, and Hawaii are all targets. Shemya Island is a target. These are massive, massive targets if we actually go to a massive war. So it's kind of trippy to think about the stuff that they're practicing for and what they're doing. But the massive deployments to mainland Alaska, this is another thing going down in Alaska. Obviously, something is brewing. And that's why I encourage people to prepare, to have yourself a basic plan just in case something goes down. And I think that this is a long game. And like other military members have said, that they believe that everything is going to change in this next year. So I think that our timeline has moved up a lot. This is a long game. I think that this has been a long time in the making, and we're getting closer to the finish line. And I don't think anybody wants to win this race. At least us as civilians don't, because we know that, whatever the finish line is a really, really horrible event. Again, if you have information that you can share, give us an email, drop us an email, adam@marfooglenews.com or dex@marfooglenews.com, or send it to both to be safe. And then world's most advanced humanoid robot, Emeka, reveals that she thinks life will be like in 100 years. So is a robot takeover on the cards? So this is kind of funny. It basically says, at first glance, you'd be forgiven for mistaking this as a clip from the latest sci-fi blockbuster, but the robot shown chatting away is very much real and has been described as the world's most advanced humanoid robot. This week, the developers behind Emeka, I think that's Emeka, released a new video asking their bot what she thinks society will be like in 100 years. Thankfully, Emeka's predictions indicate that the future is looking bright and that there's no robot takeover. It says, in 100 years, I believe humanity will be on a much better place, the robot explained. This is Emeka, by the way. If you have ever talked to ChatGPT, it's very scary how fast it is and how fast it replies and how much of a human it talks. You would expect it to make super bad mistakes or language mistakes. Like they said, there's going to be a lot worse scams out there from China and foreign countries because they now have the ability to write out their scams with ChatGPT, because it does have errors, but it's a lot less bad than, say, somebody who doesn't know English well. It's actually, I've never caught one in myself, and I've talked to it a bunch, and I've never caught something that would go, oh, that's a robot or that's a machine. It sounds like somebody writing it. It's very, very good. Now imagine when they team that up with these advanced robots, which the technology has gotten small enough, the batteries, the motors, everything has gotten small enough to where they can literally make these into a thing. I mean, Tesla is talking about, Elon Musk is talking about the X-Bot or whatever it's called. They're making all sorts of companies are making these bots that are essentially going to replace the physical aspect of human workers. You're talking about warehouse workers, anything like that. That will be robotic humanoids that can only just stand at one spot with the robotic arm, but can walk away and do other tasks and go get coffee. I mean, this is freaky, freaky, freaky stuff. And then think about that, combine it with artificial intelligence and the ability to talk to you. it's terrifying. I think we need to pause this. I don't think whatever positives there are, I think people really need to weigh humanity and say, okay, if we're going to evolve, then we may want to do it a different way or something. I don't know. Our lives, as you know it, are going to change. Like, this is absolutely freaky. Dex, out of all the things that this robot said, what did you think was the most interesting?
Well, to me, it sounded just like what the media would want us to hear. It was almost like it was programmed to say this, but it said that I want to say it said that things will be better in 100 years. I believe humanity will be in a much better place, is the specific quote. We'll have made great strides towards sustainability and equality while also creating new technologies that make our lives easier and more enjoyable. It wasn't profound. It was not like that. But the interesting thing was that when asked the question, the robot paused, looked to the sky as if it was thinking for its answer, and then waited a moment and then responded. And then it went on to say we may even venture beyond the boundaries of Earth and explore other worlds. That's about the extent of it. I think a lot of people just think that it can speak back in that tone, speak back with that type of information, and even look like it's thinking about its response and answer creeps out a lot of people. And I would probably creep me out if I saw this thing talking to me, if I was talking to it. Much kind of like the way, as you said, talking to something like ChatGPT and knowing that it's a computer is kind of creepy, the way it talks back to you so eloquently.
I think they programmed that. They programmed it to look up, because humans often, they'll look to a certain direction. I don't know if it's look up and to the left when it's from memory, or look up to the right, whichever one it is, because we're accessing a certain part of our brain. It's from memory. So like you'll see the body language experts, they'll look at somebody if they're telling the truth or not, if they're telling a story, if they're looking from memory, or if they're using a different part of their brain, they use something else. When I was a kid, you don't think about it. I was trying to think of a story from when I was a kid to see if my eyes would go there, but it's creepy that they've probably programmed this in there so you wouldn't be able to tell even if a robot was lying. Like, that's freaky. Think about this. If this gets matched up with technology like what we've covered, they're making this living skin technology that would be able to cover these robots. This is straight out of sci-fi. This is something that's moving forward at like breakneck speeds. It's crazy. And then Loch Ness Monster hunters say that they heard mysterious gloops underwater but forgot to plug in their recorder. Oh, this guy just looks mad. I don't know if this is actually the photo. Yeah. I would be like this too. It kind of reminds me of the video Derek posted the other day of the guy. He's sitting in a kayak and I don't know what place you can go fishing with where you're in a kayak and you can just scoop up with a net and grab like a 20-pound fish. But he grabs a 20-pound fish and then he looks at the net and it's empty. And then somehow gets lucky enough, it swims on the other side. He scoops it up again, gets it, and then it falls out the hole in the net. And he just kind of sits there like, I think he said the F word. And then he was like, and Derek posted and said, is anybody having a day like this? Because I am. But that reminds me of this. Like, if they did have legitimate evidence of, say, the Loch Ness Monster, and then they forgot to press the record button, that would suck. It said this weekend about 200 volunteers joined the biggest search in 50 years for the elusive creature, affectionately nicknamed Nessie in Scotland. Alan McKenna, a search leader for Loch Ness exploration, was on a boat on Friday using the hydrophone system to record sounds underwater. It says, we did hear something. We heard 4 distinctive gloops. I like that, gloops. We got all a bit excited, ran to make sure that the recorder was on, and it wasn't plugged in. The recording mistake meant the sounds could not be further examined, and organizers could later conceded that the blubbling sounds could have been, in fact, ducks, per the newspaper. So whether they were Loch Ness or Daffy Duck, we will never know. But again, I didn't know gloop was actually a word, but apparently it is. It says, McKenna said, despite the horrific weather, volunteers from around the world banded together to search for the monster, per the Telegraph. Now, Loch Ness, everybody has their different beliefs about, like, Yeti and Bigfoot and stuff like this. Loch Ness is something that I've actually believed in since I was a kid, and here's why. I've believed in Loch Ness because if there was something that survived through multiple disasters, like an asteroid that caused a tsunami around the planet or a massive flood, it would be something like the, and I'm forgetting what it's called, the mosasaur, not mosasaur. It would be something like the dinosaur that was the Loch Ness monster, whatever that actually is. And we have found animals and big animals that can be down super, super, super far. I've always wondered, like, could it have survived? We know less about our oceans than we do about space. So it is kind of crazy that we, know so little. I also think about the giant squid, how up until just a few years ago, we had like 1 or 2 pictures of it at most, and it had only been sighted a few times. And this is, something is larger than a school bus, and, people just never saw it. So do you believe that not Loch Ness, but some sort of animal could live down there, and that might be what somebody sees? Now, I wonder, though, if it was something that needed oxygen and needed to come up, then it would be far more likely that it would not be alive still, because people would have seen it by now. But what if there was something that, didn't need to breathe, didn't need to come up, or if it does come up, it doesn't need to actually surface. It just kind of has some sort of blowhole system or something. I don't know. Do you believe in Loch Ness? I think that I don't believe it, but I do believe that there could be something like it down there that we haven't discovered yet. Or I believe that a lot of animals have abilities to, if they heard a boat coming from 1,000 miles away, they could, dive deeper. Animals have crazy senses and can sense things. Who knows? It could have echolocation and could be that it hides anytime anything comes near. Dex, do you believe in Loch Ness?
I don't disbelieve. I think it's possible. I was fascinated with it when I was a kid because I thought it was cool. It was probably my intro into conspiracy, right? But this thing stems from a 1934 photograph that was published in the Daily Mail. That's the infamous picture that everybody sees with the head sticking out of the water. That's what started it all, and of course, a lot of people now say that photo was a hoax, but they're not sure. But that's what it's all based off. It's based off that one picture. And of course, there's been numerous like little things that have happened since then. People searching for it, think they see this, think they see that. But yeah, it's who am I to say what we don't know is happening underneath the water? I didn't go down there. I haven't seen it, and I don't think anybody else has either. So
what about
it's pretty deep.
What about the thing that was put on the Japanese stamp? Was it on the Japanese stamp? That's what got me to believe when I was a kid. It was the story was that a fishing boat pulled up a Loch Ness monster and it was dead, but it still had flesh on it. And what the thing, they said it smelled so bad that they had to throw it back, and it had it up on cranes. And yeah, I get it. It doesn't sound too believable. If they found something like that, then they would have kept it no matter what the smell is. But they said that they like put it back, and they got pictures of it and stuff. Do you guys remember that? Japan had it on an actual stamp. What do I look for that? See. Yeah, this sea monster, plesiosaur carcass. Right, and it looked like this, and it was being pulled out of the boat. And why is it so hard to find? You'd think that would be the first like result. Does anybody know? Dex, can you help me find that? It's a picture, and it's pulled up outside half the boat. I would love to see what people are saying about this too. Say, oh, it's a hoax, and it could have been found a hoax since then. But let's see here. Sure, they did. Where are the pictures? That's the thing. There was a picture, and it was in a book when I was a kid. Sea hold.
I have a picture. Hang on.
It has flesh on it. It has flesh. Sea creature.
It's in Screener.
You got it?
Yeah. It was on a wiki article.
Yes. Okay. So this is what I saw when I was a kid. And so it could be a zoom in of a horse or something, but the perspective or something, but they said that they pulled it up and yes, it was perished, but what they said was that because it still had flesh on it, that means it had perished within the last few years and it was giant, right? And I guess the point was that even if it was alive a few years ago, then maybe it might not be extinct, right? This was the photo. And after this, Japan, so many people believed it that they ended up putting it as like a national stamp. And it was Japan's national stamp on their thing for a while. I know a lot of people, either they don't care or they just think it's silly. But I think out of all of the crazy things, like Bigfoot and Yeti and stuff, I think Loch Ness would be the most believable because it could survive in the ocean. It could go dive deep, and we still can't even get to the very bottom levels of the ocean. But yet we've found bigger animals that can, that their makeup is able to actually do it. Anyways, what do you guys think? And I'm sure everybody's like, sure, crazy. All right. And then before we move on, make sure to go over and check out marfooglenews.com/prep. You can get freeze-dried food and 25% off a 3-month plan right now, which will get you a ton of food at today's prices. And again, this will last 25 years. If you get this today, in 5 years from now, if it triples in price like it did the last 5 years, you'll still have 20 years left on the shelf, and you won't have to pay tomorrow's prices. Freeze-dried food is getting extremely expensive. Freeze dryers in itself can be thousands and thousands of dollars, and I have no idea what they will cost. But even if you wanted to get into this yourself, it takes time. It's really, really great. This is one of the most affordable ways to get food in bulk, freeze-dried, at marfooglenews.com/prep through My Patriot Supply. Make sure to go check it out. And then also make sure to use that link because you'll get a huge discount and you'll be supporting our channel at the same time. All right. And then Blessed Hope, Tom and here. Hey, nice to see you. Tribe of DNA says only one way, Mon. Nice to see you here. And then let's see here. Thank you, Skyhouse. Thank you, Weber. Thank you, Just Jim, for the diamond over on D Live. I appreciate that. And then thank you, Zen Wen. Thank you again. I appreciate that. Chanel Beveliqua. Rumble the Clown. Thank you. Says one just to stop in quick while live. I'm needing Foogle Fam prayers for a loved one getting testing done to see why she has been sick. Prayers much appreciated. You truly are extended family. Rumble the Clown. Well, I don't know what kind of sick, but they're saying a lot of people right now have the new thing that came out in 2019. I would say just have that person take care of themselves. But if it's like something like where they're getting tested for cancer, all the prayers going to you and things. Several people I know are going through the same thing. Cars don't have ground, but they have rubber tires. EMP, Sean Ryder. I believe that to the frame, it grounds it to the frame. I get what you're saying,
Correct.
though. Yeah. Well, it disperses the electrical signal to the frame. Charge, yeah. So it actually does use the frame. All right, and let's go over the web only. And we have
got a
lot of stuff going on with T-Man.
Yeah, so head over to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or open up that show notes link down below in the description. You'll get to this webpage with everything we just covered, all the links. You want to go check out the Loch Ness story or anything else, it's there. You can find it. You'll find this orange bar called overflow. It's the rest of the story. There's lots actually happening here. So let's quickly go over some of it. One of the things, though, I want to remind everybody that Resvani tank that giveaway is still going on. So I put a link back in there for you to find it if you're looking for it. If you haven't registered to win, $440,000 street legal survival tank. It's EMP proof, bulletproof, explosive proof, got smoke screen and pepper spray, all sorts of cool stuff on it. It's like a bug out vehicle dream. You can go click that link right there on our page. It'll take you over and you can register for it. It's from My Patriot Supply. All right. Continuing down below the rest of the story. So there was just like we saw the air traffic control in UK, there was a similar thing that happened in Poland, but it was just a couple of trains that were shut down, but they were shut down by unauthorized radio signals. Basically, somebody got on a radio channel and gave an order to stop moving the train as if it was an official order. And then, of course, they found out later that there was the Russian national anthem being played in the background, and they're, of course, blaming and pointing the finger at Russia. I think they actually arrested somebody for it, for inappropriately using the radio waves that they shouldn't be using. That's interesting that we've seen lots of these little things happening, especially Poland is always sort of at the crosshairs. Them and the UK are both at the crosshairs of Russia right now. Another one is the counteroffensive. There's a map or this display of maps that sort of walks you through the progress or lack thereof. If you want to see that, it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of questions going on with Wagner's and the forces, and what are they going to do next? And are they going to be, have a job or be working for someone? So that's up in the air. There's also some stuff about Prigozhin and what he had said in the past. They've resurfaced an old clip about him talking about a plane falling apart in the air. Of course, that has created a whole bunch of conspiracy around it, where everybody's talking about that. But he was referring to the current state of affairs with the conflict, and as things weren't going well, he said it was going to fall apart like a plane falling apart in the air. But that just leads everybody to go down this path because there's so much to discuss about whether or not he's alive, not alive, the coup was real or not real. So all that's there. We got tons of information on it. So if you want to go check it out, you can check it out. There was a humongous 800-pound, what they quote unquote call a nightmare material alligator caught in the Mississippi. Record shattering. I've never seen one this big. Go check it out. You want to see the picture? It's amazing. Huge. I think probably eat a person in one gulp. It's a massive alligator. We do have all the political stuff. So the new date is set for one of the trials. It's March 4th. It then conflicts with the other trial, which has a date that's less than 6 weeks out. So I don't know how in the world they're going to pull all this stuff off. It's almost like they need them to be doing simultaneous trials, but that'll eventually get worked out because I think judges actually work with one another to resolve those types of conflicts, but it is creating quite a mess. And so, of course, that's what that's all meant to be. So go check it out if you want to know more about what's going on with the T-Man saga. That information we talked about with BRICS and the 1 million barrels of oil, if you want the details on that, that is there. And we got more stuff like what was happening at Burning Man. The Nevada Rangers plowed through a barricade that protesters had set up. Kind of an interesting video if you want to check it out. That's there. And they're also speculating that we first found life on Mars 50 years ago, but we eradicated it. It's an interesting presupposition about the testing they did on a 1970s rover that landed. They're thinking that if they did find life, and then we're not talking like, aliens running around playing football on the land. They're talking about microorganisms that the test they used actually killed them. So they would have never discovered them to begin with. But anyway, interesting story if you want to read more about it. That and so much more. So there's a lot of more. And my gosh, some guy has made a booth that you can use if you want to get off of this planet. And I don't mean in a spaceship, the bad way. That is on there as well. I cannot believe this is now a product, but that's what they've done. Go check it out. All of that and so much more. It's like the rest of the story. It's an entire show's worth of more content and information. We put it together for you every night. It's on our website, marfooglenews.com. Click on the thumbnail for the show or open up that show notes link down below in the description.
It's kind of like that roller coaster designed to take your life, right? We covered that probably last year. It was a roller coaster that did 3 specific loops, and it did it in such a way that it would do it at such G's that by the 3rd loop you would be gone, and you would fall asleep peacefully, and essentially by the end of the roller coaster ride you'd be gone. And they were trying to actually talk about making this thing so, because in some places, if they could legalize, if you didn't want to live, you could take your own, unalive. And then Vivek Ramaswamy, I'd love to get your opinions on this guy. He came out of nowhere, in my opinion, just out of nowhere. And everything he says, there's a lot of things he says that everybody's like, wow. But do any of you just kind of wonder about like how he just came out of nowhere? I've seen videos of him doing his graduation. Have you seen that video? It's a Vivek Ramaswamy, and he talks exactly the same when he was 18 years old, a young kid. And you could just tell he was meant for like public speaking. Probably did public speaking lessons when he was 13 and probably did every elective possible in school. Probably was valedictorian, who knows, prom king, whatever it was. But the guy is the way something there makes me think, like, is he the insert like 3-letter agency? He's too good. He says the stuff that's like it's just too good. You know what I'm saying? When something's too good to be true, because he's talking about all this stuff, there are some downsides too, though. There was something that he believes in. Every candidate has something that completely contradicts how good they could be. I forget what Vivek's, but I know that like RFK, obviously, he believes in the great change. There's every one of them has something that's like, oh, that's a negative. Dex, go ahead.
Just over 2 presidents ago, we had a president that came in that was sort of young and came out of nowhere, didn't have a lot of political experience, and just boom, said all the right things. A great
spoke
orator.
Well. Everybody loved him.
Yep.
Because everything he said, I mean, I agree with a lot of the stuff he says because he's saying the stuff that they normally say on the corners of the internet. But it makes you think. And then he just said today, what made me go, he said he would want Elon Musk as one of his advisors. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? Something's up, man. And he is not T-Man, but he's saying all the stuff that everybody that would follow T-Man wants to hear. DeSantis doesn't seem like he's doing as well as people thought he was going to. This guy has more personnel. It just, I don't know, came out of left field. And then I could see, what is that? The headquarters for CIA. What is that called? It's in every movie. Langley. I could totally see him being like a Langley graduate, like the top spy or something. I don't know. And they get somebody in like that, and everybody's like, yeah. And then right off the bat, they start making huge power moves. I don't know. Something about it. But everybody, all of them are probably some sort of, puppeteer or puppet. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Just thinking out loud. All right. Thank you, Rumble the Clown. Thank you, Chanel Beveliqua. Thank you, Cheryl Johnson, for subscribing. Thank you, Sean, for subscribing. Thank you, Jay Tig, for subscribing. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it so much. Every single person that subscribes, thank you. And if you're already subscribed and you watch this show for 5 years and you haven't checked your subscribe, make sure you're subscribed. Even if you type my name in every time, make sure to check the bell, all notifications. And if you feel that this show had any value at all, make sure to press the like button. I don't know if it helps or not, but it would be so thoughtful of you if you did that. Appreciate you. Thank your mods. Drop an M in the chat for your mods right now. And thank you, Dex. Appreciate you.
Much love. Great job, brother.
It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro.
Operation pull the dagger. Don't need to pat it, they got it right up past ya. Didn't even need a ladder, go if you had faster. Going back around and what is going on in Alaska. Operation pull the dagger. info max. Katie cleans a lot in the Captain Obama. A mama of a 6 and a big old mama. A bubba one with the eyebrow jigs darns. Scooby do a do right, Janet on a bunker. I bought leave you right in hunker on down, and it felt the same way now. Heard him dog, and we need Jesus walk. Maybe on water. Rudy on the Ramos and a Mister on the butter and a Brian on the bacon aberration. Bug Nana and a Mister in a station. Guys station, I like a blessed hole. Truthful, I believe, leave dark. Winter is a year, a black sheep and no fear.
Chanel Beveliqua, thank you for being top supporter tonight. Thank you, and thank you. Scooby-Doo, I do right during Saturday. Doc, Papa, Dopalis, and what's I say? Arizona and a snow mama. Everybody being back since Obama. Jace Parker and the dish is neato. Jace Parker and everybody treato. Treat yourself to a labo. Carrick a rat and not your business. Hey, blame the government. Blame the government. Blame the government. KT cleans a lot. I only shout him out every couple of weeks because there's not that many. But I will read it on air. Usually I would do it on Fridays. Tim, up. If you're talking about this was for 2023 and haven't changed this for a couple months. This is for the whole year.
A bit on a bet with the thing. Oh, I said it. I laid the ass in the jack land.
And I think you're on that from last year.
Katie cleans a lot. Linda ass and the Jacqueline. L and the Don D. Lisa H and the Sheila B. Jeff B. Johnny D and the Joe and the A. Tiffany P and the M, Mr. A. Hey, with a Mr. Dean G. Helen M. Nicole S and a retard U.S. Army. Kathleen M. Sonia P. Stephanie M. O. and Chris G. With a Linda P. LJP and the Linda P. I with a Jeffrey C. Hey, I with a Mary K. Hey, I with a Claire M. Peter S. and the Blaine E. Yeah. No need to pat it, got it right up past ya. Didn't even need a ladder, go if you had faster. Going back around and what is going on in Alaska. Operation, pull the dagger. No need to pat it, got it right up past ya. Didn't even.
Boom. Let's make a new one for Chanel Beveliqua. Chanel Beveliqua.